You can't do that on Twitter. So like, my thing is just like roasting. Like, New York City public school system, right here, and in the flesh. That's like a thing we do. Like, your
Yep.
mom's, da 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 da. You know what I mean? And you just go back and forth and you just roast each other. Now it's like I feel like it's gotten to a point where if I'm arguing something as like simple as like music fandom, right? Let's say for example, and I'll say, well, I'm not really feeling this dude. Like, yo, he makes this type of music and blah 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 blah, whatever. Then, like you said, like the quote tweet and like the attack, and now my mentions are full of people calling me nigger monkey, and I'm just like, what? And then I get sent to Twitter jail because I replied like, bro, don't say that shit to me. I'll smack you. Then it's like, boom, he threatened me. Blah 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 blah. So
Yeah.
is it as simple as just being like, yo, I'm gonna report you first, or is there like is there an algorithm? Like, is there a team of people in a lab? Like,
Well,
chill, that's not right.
all the things, all the things. But I mean,
Oh
look,
yeah.
the keyboard makes it easy to be an asshole. And the keyboard certainly makes it easy to harass, and it's just not fair and felt in an overwhelming proportion
Oh yeah.
by women on our service. So we're doing a few things. Reporting, like if we just consider the concept of like you having to report a tweet, you're a victim of abuse and harassment. We just asked you to do a bunch of work while you're a victim. It's just not acceptable. So a lot of our work thus far over the past 2 years is to be able to automate that, to check to see if with our machine learning and our deep learning algorithms, where we see abuse and harassment and automatically act on it. And we've come a super far way. And that automatic action might result in it pushing up to one of our agents that takes the tweet down, or gives a warning to the account holder. It might be downranking the tweet so it has fewer visibility. So that's one aspect, is just automation so that we don't put the burden of work on the victims. The second is just giving people better controls. So one of the things we launched was the ability to moderate your mentions, moderate your replies. So you can just push them to another column. Everyone can still see what you push, so we still have that transparency, so that you can tell when someone is actually moving the conversation to another side, so it's not as visible. But those simple controls will go a far way. But again, that is also work. So what we did was we opened up an API so developers can build tools to automate some of that as well. And then we can benefit from all the intelligence and the skill from folks outside of our organization to build smart models to do this for people as well. And they can just hook it up to their account and get that done. Or you can just leave it all, all is, no filter whatsoever. And then of course, finally, there's policy. But far too often in the past, we've relied too much on policy and not enough on product changes, not enough on automation. So that's the majority of the work we've been doing for the past 2 years. But it's our top priority as a company, and there's a new dynamic of it right now, which we're seeing, especially in this time of COVID, which is misleading information.
Yeah, speaking of that,
so making sure that.
I mean, we all know who the
yeah. So
misinformation
we're starting
is
to see
regarding COVID.
organized efforts where there's like bot networks and people are spreading misinformation about COVID, and they're spreading conspiracies about 5G and the Bill Gates Foundation. And we know that you just donated a lot of money to fight for COVID-19 relief. So what steps is Twitter taking to like eliminate those bot networks and the bad actors on Twitter out there spreading disinformation? Because you're seeing people you're seeing what seems like grassroots movements, and it turns out that it's not necessarily as grassroots as it seems. So is there any way that Twitter is recognizing that these are bots and that these are not real people starting things, or like how do you guys balance that?
Yeah, three ways. One is around labeling, specifically at the profile level, the account level. The second is around automatic detection, and then the third is around making sure that people have context. So this is labeling of the tweets as well. So the first one It's just looking, our blue badge is a little bit old and it's not scaling to what we need. We made a small iteration by labeling
Right.
folks who are in a particular election in any country around the world. But you can imagine that expanding much deeper and actually giving a lot more clarity to the credibility of a particular account, and even identifying human versus bot accounts straight up, so that people can tell that this is a bot and they don't have to do all the digging to see if it has followers or who it's following or when it joined. So there's a lot of that information on the profile level that we could do better at. The second is just looking at the network, looking at that dynamic, and a lot of this misleading information spread follows the same vectors that spammers use. So a lot of our work on spam to defeat spam also helps with misleading information. It's not everything, but it's a start. And then finally is labeling the tweets themselves. And the team is working on a great experiment to do just that we hope to launch as quickly as possible to give people a broader context for any particular tweet. We have done some of that for COVID. Like if you search for anything COVID related, you should see a link to the CDC, for instance. And just giving people the resources and the context, no matter what they're viewing on the service, so that they are better informed. And even if there's a debate around a particular issue and disagreement,
Right.
I mean, you've seen this on Wikipedia where there's a particular article and in context. Yeah, so like labeling that sort of stuff helps a lot, and I think we'll disarm a bunch of it. But I'll say like misleading information is like the challenge of our industry right now. The ability to create deep fakes is moving much faster and with much higher quality than the ability to detect it. So this is going to be a race, just like security is. You can never build a perfect system. You just have to be 10 steps ahead
like
of
misinformation
the
and
attackers.
Disinformation and all that kind of stuff. Like maybe ban Trump for like a month or something like that. I don't know. Maybe is that something that has even crossed anybody's mind over there, or is it just like we're not getting into like politics stuff? Like you guys figure it out amongst yourselves, or because like in this situation, I feel like if he's just spouting off and saying all types of wild stuff, that should obviously that falls under the guidelines of the app. But when you're spreading misinformation about stuff like COVID, that's potentially harmful. So like, is there any like ramifications for this dude, or does he just get to cook?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think you're speaking to Trump and misleading information. I mean, that's where I think labeling will come in really handy. We have seen other global leaders around the world spread potentially harmful misleading information as well, and have interstitial those tweets. One of the reasons we interstitial it is because we do believe that these tweets are in the public interest, so that people can engage with these directly and talk with them directly. I mean, like when it's broadcast on television, you have no ability to talk back. When it's on Twitter, you do have the ability to reply. You do have the ability to quote tweet and add your own opinion and point of view on top of it. And we believe that's important. And we also recognize that when these tweets go out, people are screenshotting them. They're putting them on television. They're putting them on websites. They're tweeting them themselves. So like the cat's already out in the bag. So anything that we can do to interstitial a lot of this and provide context that is credible and might show a disagreement or a debate around the topic, I think will be helpful. But that's some of the work we're busy doing right now.
Anytime Trump tweets, you get notified, and you have to make a decision, or is that not like how your day works? Oh, okay.
It's our policy team. So they're looking at, and they're looking at reports. It's not just any time he tweets, but any reports against a particular account's tweets they start acting on. It's very rare the case that it bubbles over to me. And when it does, my main role in that is just asking questions and making sure that we're thinking cohesively through all the ramifications and what that means, but I ultimately don't make the decision on it. We want to build a system that does it. I don't want to build a company that's entirely dependent upon one person. You don't want to create single points of failure in this. So the frameworks that we build are important. And look, like in the past, we did a pretty terrible job at like explaining our policies and explaining the boundaries of those policies. And a lot of people make assumptions based on that. And we also, assuming that people read our terms of service.
I don't think anybody reads any terms of service
the biggest egregious one. So it's got to be clear. It's got to be clear in the product, right? And that's what I mean by like we've been leaning too heavily on policy and not enough on like product education and like it being in the product where you're experiencing the harassment, where you're seeing a tweet that's questionable that you want to report. That's where we could do a much better job.
Snap.
So, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Can I ask you some questions? Can I just want to hear more depth about the story of like Twitter for you in the early days and just like what brought you to the service and why do you stick with it? I mean, what do you find?
Twitter,
What's the
I
value?
was actually working security at a nightclub way back in '08. And one of my friends told me about it, and I joined it just because I was like, maybe this is going to be something. And there was maybe like 4 people on it, it felt like, and I never went back on it. And then maybe 2 months later, I logged in just to see what the hell was going on, and I had a couple of friends following me, and they had started tweeting. So I was just like, all right, it's just something to do. And that back in the early days, Twitter was more like a journal than it was for discourse. So it was more like when I'd work at night at the club from like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., I would basically, we didn't know it was live tweeting, but I would just say exactly what was happening in front of me or like what song was being played, not expecting anyone to respond to it. And then it was it went along that way for a while. And then once Black Twitter came around and we started doing Follow Fridays and memes, and that's when it really took off. That's when Twitter started feeling like a family, and my use skyrocketed. And especially I had a really crappy office job that I hated. So every day I would log into my office job and log into Twitter and just live tweet how crappy my office job was. And people really appreciated that because apparently other people had crappy office jobs at the same time. So from there, it took off running.
Yeah, for me, it was just like I'm OG clamshell phone 40404 gang, it was just my friend
Jack,
Crystal actually. Oh,
I didn't hear you, Mero.
I didn't hear you, Mero. You broke up a little bit. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
You're breaking. Yeah, I can't really hear you, Mero.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Well, Jack, what was your favorite? What's been your best memory from Twitter so far?
Man, I mean, there's just been so many. I mean, like,